and welcome to the Tennessee Informer. I'm your host, Dave Vance. Tonight's special guest is Karen Van Wyk, the National Organization Director for the pro-family organization Mass Resistance. But before we introduce her, first it's time for announcements and updates. For good conservative talk radio, tune in to 105.3 WDXE Radio in Lawrenceburg from 5 to 6 p.m. on Mondays for the Kip Capley Show and Wednesdays from 5 to 6 p.m. for the local GOP radio show hosted by Chair of the Lawrence County GOP, Brandon Taylor, and Lawrence Sutton, the Secretary of the Lawrence County GOP. And now on Fridays with Free Speech News featuring Lawrence Sutton and Chris Morris, the Chair of the Giles County GOP and an SEC member from 5 to 6 p.m. The Tennessee Committee for the Bill of Rights will have their 21st annual Bill of Rights banquet. The keynote speaker is Senator Janice Bowling. The banquet will be held December 15th at Trinity Chapel, 240 First Avenue, Dayton, Tennessee. Registration is at 5:30. Paid reservations of $40 each. Children under 12 for $20 should be turned in by December 1st. Make checks payable to June Griffith, mailed to her at 265 Crestview Lane, Dayton, Tennessee 37321. The meal will be provided by Evelyn's Catering. Remember, this is not a fundraiser, but a celebration of the 232nd anniversary of the Bill of Rights. If you want our state to step up and push back on overreaching, often unconstitutional federal government, visit tncss@weebly.com and learn more about the nullification legislation we hope to get passed this session. There's no cost, it's an informational site, but we'd like for you to click on the Substack tab to sign up. We need as many people as we can get to show support for this effort. Please talk to your state rep and state senator now and get their commitment to support this very important piece of legislation. Help put some teeth in the 10th. Please spread the word. We want to thank and congratulate David Seal from Jefferson County, the author of a resolution to support House Bill 726/Senate Bill 1092, which establishes multiple processes for nullifying unconstitutional action, and thank and congratulate as well the Jefferson County Commission for being the first county to pass such a resolution. Hopefully many more will pass this or similar resolutions. This is pushing back against the thought that the federal government is supreme in everything it does. The supremacy clause, there's a lot of people that misunderstand that. What is supreme is the Constitution, not just any and every law that the federal government passes. That's an old lie, and it's hurting us every day, okay? And no matter how old the lie is still a lie. Remember, the key phrase in the Supremacy Clause is in pursuance thereof. If the law, the federal law, is not in pursuance thereof the Constitution, then it's not a constitutional law. It's not something that the states should just accept. And that's what this whole nullification movement is about, is for the states who have the responsibility to make sure that the federal government stays in its lane. That is a state responsibility. So all we're asking with this nullification legislation is that our state legislature do their job and push back against federal overreach. Remember, if you accept this whole idea of federal supremacy of any law, even if it's not found in the Constitution, if the power is not found in the Constitution, then that makes the 10th Amendment void. Now, the 10th Amendment says that any powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution are retained by the states or the people. If during the ratification process, the Federalist Papers repeatedly, in numerous Federalist Papers, talks about the fact that, hey, the federal government is only going to have enumerated powers. The states retain all their other powers. Well, they retain them, but the federal government is not necessarily going to follow that. It requires the states to push back. We also have the 9th Amendment. The 9th Amendment is another example. The enumeration of certain powers in the Constitution, certain rights in the Constitution, does not mean that there's not others that the states retain. So if you accept the Supremacy Clause the way so many people have for so long, if you accept the old lie, then the 9th and 10th have no meaning. That combined with this thought that anything the Supreme Court decrees is constitutional, that is killing our country. That is one of the most damaging things in our country and has been for years. So that's what this nullification is all about. It's actually about following the Constitution. It's requiring our state to step up. So we do have the Jefferson resolution posted at the TNCSS website. I encourage you to go look at it. There's 2 copies on there. There's one of the actual resolution that was passed. It's got all the signatures on it. And then there's another blank copy that you can use for your county, modify as you want. And there's also an additional model of a county resolution that was done, and it's posted on there as well. If you have an announcement from a conservative organization and want it announced on this show, send the information to tninformer.tv@gmail.com the Friday before the show. Now to our guest. Karen is the National Organizational Director for Mass Resistance, a leading pro-family activist organization which provides the information and guidance people need to confront assaults on traditional family, school children, and the moral foundation of society. She's a mother of 6 with a master's degree in applied linguistics from the University of Massachusetts, Boston. She finds her most current passion in helping conservatives rise up to protect their communities and children. Karen believes that all conservatives can and need to break with submitting to the left's tactics and regain the ground strategically stolen by them. She's a true believer in the gospel of Jesus Christ and the Judeo-Christian ethic of responsibility to family and community. Karen, thanks for joining us. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Well, glad to have you. Tell us a little bit about your organization and how you got started.
Well, you said it right there that we are a leading pro-family activist organization and that we provide the information and the guidance that people need to confront the assaults that are happening to the traditional family, children, and the foundations of our society, as we can see. It got started in 1995 by Brian Kamker, who was our founder and president, director. And he basically started it as getting involved with his own children in his own school. Back then, it was called the Parents' Rights Coalition. And it wasn't until 2006 that we adopted that name, really, as a response to to have a name that reflected the true resistance we need to have against tyrannical government. That was clear that we needed to do that. But our main focus is that we fight the left. And we give citizens and the activists that are join with us and work with us. We give them the tools and the strategies that they need to effectively confront this anti-family force that's happening. And so yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
Well, Mass Resistance, and of course the group was formed in Massachusetts, so you guys are definitely kind of in a minority there, just having traditional values, especially if you're in any of the metro areas. So it would definitely take a massive effort by all the conservatives you could rally within Massachusetts, I would imagine, to have any success in that state and states like that.
My understanding that there's a lot of conservatives, like it is a leftist type, run area state governmentally, but there are a lot of activists in there, believe it or not. Even funny, in another place like California, we have tons of activists there. Okay. And so it's not always, even though that's really far left, that doesn't mean there's no activists there.
Right.
It's
Right.
just not, yeah.
Well, that's like Tennessee and a lot of states in the South are considered conservative. But
Right.
our metro areas, I mean, Nashville, it's pretty much San Fran on the Cumberland, and then Memphis, which that's a whole nother ball game. But Knoxville,
Yeah.
Chattanooga, the left pretty much controls all the cities, no matter where you're talking about.
The major cities.
Yeah, the major cities, absolutely.
Democrat run type cities, yes.
So you actually have your main focus is families, but of course there's different fights within there. You want to talk about that a little bit? Some of the different things.
Families, yeah, we deal a lot with children in school, the pornography and the books that are there, the perverted sexualization of the kids, and within interwoven within the curriculum, and also the books that are in the library. They're really going after the children. So we do, we do of course work with parents, but the attack is really, a lot of it's on the children, which is part of a family, you know what I mean? But um, yeah, but then there's also issues of, like the drag queens and then and many other things that go, are interwoven with that. But a lot of that influence through the schools through the school libraries and the public libraries is through the American Library Association. They are very, very invested
Yeah.
in in basically queering the children. Okay,
Right.
that's what it's not the good old safe library that we always thought. It's not.
No.
It's it's turned to something quite poisonous these days.
Well, and the federal government, and of course even the state government to a degree, although we have some people fighting back against it, but the ALA is in every state, and probably the school libraries in most every state are cooperating with the ALA. And I don't think most people realize how far left and how perverted the ALA is.
Well, first, I'd like to say that we have had there just recently like in Florida, there's been that library, the Citrus County Library, has cut ties with ALA, and they go after their city council or whatever, board of supervisors or whatever they call it, and they can vote them out. So they can, we do have the power to get that, within our public libraries to fight back to get them cut. Yes, they are very poisonous. The president, Drabinsky, she is very open and very happy about the fact that she's a lesbian and very happy about the fact that she's here to queer the children, that is their mission.
Hmm.
And she's not at all, you could just look on the website. I'm not making this up, that's, those are her quotes. That is what they're about. And they're to take this issue and to like frame it in a way of inclusion and all this other garbage, and it's not that at all.
No.
They're trying to sexualize and harm children
At the youngest ages. I mean, and this is not something that's happening just in high school. I mean, this is all the way through.
we're talking, no, not at all. Yeah, right, because you can get a child. What kind of person would want to put pornography in front of a child? That's not a normal person.
No, that's a pervert, and they should be in jail.
Okay, and those are the people who are basically like, who are in control of our school system, and like, as far as curriculum, what's accepted in the National Federation of Teachers, this whole issue of what they call the left's talking points of inclusion, of non-discrimination, of all this other stuff. And what they're doing is they're trying to confuse children so then they can control them.
Yep. Well, and it goes back to what I was
break
talking.
apart the family. There's a whole lot, yeah, there's a whole lot of things you can go on all different tangents with that, but yeah.
Well, a minute ago I was talking about federal overreach, and of course, there's nothing in the Constitution about a federal Department of Education. And what they send down to our states is perversion for the most part anymore. And I don't foresee the Department of Education ever being deactivated. So it's on the states to just say, look, we're not going to take your money anymore if that means we have to push the perverted stuff that you're pushing. So that's what has to happen at state level, in my opinion.
Exactly. And you're talking about it's a very much a common sense, but unfortunately, a lot of these people within the states are also just as corrupt as the federal.
Yeah. Complicit or incompetent in many cases. So,
Yeah.
There's a lot of different groups out there, and especially now on school issues and dealing with obscenity and pornography and whatnot. So how is your group different than some of the other pro-family groups?
Well, as I began, the first thing I said is that we fight the left. But tell the truth is very powerful. To say it as they are and to be confrontational. We're different in the sense of many pro-family groups, they want to be like reasonable or be politely oppositional, and so they cannot accomplish much. It takes a kind of a I mean, you don't have to yell or scream, but this idea that you're dealing with someone who wants a solution. You know, a lot of conservatives have, you know, because of the normal way they would think. Oh, if I tell them there's a problem, they're going to say, "Oh, we'll fix it. Yeah, let's make peace. Let's figure something out." They don't care what you think.
Right.
They're not looking for a solution. They're looking to, you know, have their way and do whatever it takes to bully you to stop. And so the reasonable, polite way, you know, or writing emails or just doing these things that, you know, a normal person would do if they felt like something was wrong, doesn't work with this type of a mindset. Doesn't work with this type of um, almost like a evil viciousness, because it's not really about, it's really about good versus evil. It's really about that. There's no other way to look at it. Um, what kind of person like would want to get up and, you know, go to work and just to like push porn on children? Like, what kind of person would do that? And when they know that that could ruin a child's life,
Right.
you know, who would do that? So this is the kind of people you're dealing with. And so if you're dealing with this kind of person, then you have to deal with them in a certain way. You have to understand that it's a war, that it's psychological, and it's also like a spiritual war. And so to be polite, like that just doesn't work. I'm not saying you have to be rude, but you have to be definitely be willing to, you know, tell the truth and to be confrontational. And that alone, you know, most people, when you do that, like that alone, you know, as we have seen with different victories, definitely they don't know what to do with that because they're not used to that.
Call
So
them
when you
out and
really
don't back
actually,
down.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. You're right. They're not used to that. They're so used to they'll play one of those cards, whether it's the race card or the fascist or whatever card they want to throw, and they're used to people just backing down and you know they win. But when you
right.
push back and you don't quit, especially when they say all these things about you and make all these accusations, and you don't let it stop you, they don't know how to handle that.
Yeah, like for instance, you said the one part in Tennessee, I think the county where everybody knows everybody, they have a job there, and so they're told this thing, and they're all basically afraid.
Well,
And so fear is, you know, and if they you know, flip that and say, you know, we're not having this, you know, and then that kind of pressure, like, oh, we don't want to lose our job, so we're afraid, we won't say anything, you know. But if you actually said, you know what, this needs to stop regardless. And you know what I mean? If everybody did the same thing and exerted their we the people power, it would be amazing what kind of things would flip around very quickly.
oh yeah, absolutely. So, what are some of the success stories that you guys have had?
Um, well, one that was just posted today, there was a like I'll just review. There's a drag queen story hour that we stopped in Lancaster. There was in a public Weeks Memorial Library. They were going to have a drag queen show there. We got that canceled. Um, let's see, 2021. There was a superintendent resigned after about a year of pressure and outrage from the local community over this, you know, the toxic agenda in the middle school. Now, a year of pressure, and that's the thing that actually has to happen. It's not like you go in there one time and just say something and they're good. You know, pressure over time pressure. And so this guy, this person, this superintendent resigned because of it. And I mentioned before about the ties of ALA being cut in Citrus County, and another county in Florida, I can't remember, in South Carolina. So we're trying to start this whole, um, you know, movement to get libraries to cut ties with the ALA.
Right.
There was a lot in Idaho, there was a library board who revised their whole policy to exclude and remove all the obscene books. Um, you know, because of what outrage, the parents' outrage. We'll call them our mass resistance activists. You know, to just say to not relent. It's about the pressure and the outrage. There's a library board in Wyoming. They fired a director over refusing to remove books, to remove obscene books. So all these different victories we have, and they're all, all accounted for on our website. You can read. We're uploading articles and wins like every week, and things that are going on sometimes several times a week. You can see them all there. That's just a few. But the main theme between that really causes anything to be successful is the fact that there's pressure, because if someone's a bully, like in regular, if a bull bullies you, they want you to be afraid to back down. But if you are not afraid and you do not back down, they don't know what to do, right? Like in
Right.
a real life, it's the same thing here. And when you say the truth, it's very powerful. And a lot of people, because of the psychological thing and the manipulation and the fear, like people don't say anything, or they're afraid of this or afraid of that, or whatever the case may be. But this is an issue that, you need courage.
Yeah. Well,
you
everybody
know
claims
and
that they would do anything for their kids. Well, this is about your kids and your grandkids. And
and
even if your kids are grown and you don't have any grandkids, guess what? Look what they're creating in that next generation. So you're still going to have to deal with it, whether you have kids or grandkids or not. But especially those who do have kids and grandkids, they should just be all over these schools, these libraries for doing this kind of stuff. How many different states is mass resistance in?
all across the United States and all in other countries as well. But I was just, this whole thing, like they're not going to stop. Like this is not something that's going to stop. Going worse. It's not going to get better. And you know what I'm saying? Like, and even the thing we see about what happened in Israel and the kind of, unhinged violence. I mean, that kind of mentality is not too far from the people that are leading this in here. And this kind of like lunatic type craziness of what transitioning kids, genital mutilation, not telling parents about it. You also deal with that. I mean, all this. Like, where is the end? There isn't. Unless people start to realize it, and that's why we want so much, to get our people activated, people to, be equipped to, take stand and do what's necessary in their areas or with others, and to deal with this issue. Because we have to understand, it's not just like something is just going to go away. We're not like asking them to change a zoning law. We're not trying to, what I'm saying? Like, it's not like that.
Right.
This is something that's unhinged, and it's poisonous, and it's spreading, and it's getting stronger, and you know what I mean, and that's why we have to resist. We have to fight the left,
Yeah. Well,
because
that's
they're
just it, the
lying.
left. You mentioned it's the left, and people don't realize this, but they've taken over most of our institutions. They started over 100 years ago, and they've had a firm grip on the schools for a long time, certainly a firm grip on secondary education, but I mean, throughout primary as well. I mean, and they are trying to push this garbage, as you know, on kindergartners, first graders, second. There's nothing is off limits to them. It won't be unless enough parents and enough decent people push back. And you're right. It's one of those never-ending fights. The good and evil thing, that fight never ends.
Right, and we have to think about getting it all out. We're not looking for a compromise. We're not looking for anything. We want it all out. Um, yeah, exactly.
How did you wrote the Tennessee AG a while back, and I think we've got that on the screen here, or we'll have in a second. So how was it that you came to write a letter to the Tennessee AG?
I just knew of an issue from one of our activists in Houston County, and I felt like this attorney general should know about it, and he should do something about it. Where at the school district there, oh, they're just, what they're doing is illegal by having, first of all, according to the Tennessee law, is having explicit sexual pornographic materials in their library at the school. But they're just circumventing it, saying they have a certain policy, and they really don't care about the law.
Right.
and anything like, so I was, and then they're trying to control what the parents that they cannot speak, pretty much at a school board meeting. It's horrendous. It's like unthinkable. So this attorney general should know what's going on. So I wrote him, and yeah,
No response yet?
no. And then I called, and the woman who answered seemed a little flustered. But anyway, so she connected me to someone else who I left a message with, and I haven't heard back.
Right, right. Well, I
I
want to.
called back a few days ago. I called about 2 or 3 days ago.
Okay. Well, I want to touch a little bit on the situation in Houston County. I do know,
Right.
one of the guy, the main person involved with it, and Houston County is the next county over. I live in Stewart County. I do know several people over there, and like a lot of Tennessee, most of Tennessee is rural, small counties, small towns. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody's related. The school district is the biggest employer pretty much in every county, and but most of these counties, if you went there on a Sunday, the churches are all full. But they, for whatever reason, allow all this garbage in their schools during the week. And matter of fact, I know that when this individual, this mutual person that you and I both know, brought the issue up to the director of schools, at first, the director of schools denied having any kind of obscene material in their schools. Just said, no, that's not true. We don't have anything obscene. And because, of course, he sent her the law, the new law. Now, see, in Tennessee, there used to be an exception in Tennessee law for, it was not an exact exemption for obscenity per se, but there was some allowance to a degree. I guess you could say they made some exception if it was in a school environment, and I don't remember what all the other factors were, but whatever the other factors were, the new law has basically said, no, schools, you no longer have an exemption, you no longer have an exception that allows you to present obscene material to children. Okay, just cut and dry. You don't get a free pass on showing kids obscene material under the guise of education. So that was a new law, and it is a felony, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's a Class E felony. And then, so that's being ignored. He did find the books. He sent a list. He finally got the list from the director. That took a little while. It was not they weren't very forthcoming, but he did finally get it. And he pointed out to them, hey, these books that you have in your school, they do have obscenity in it. And some of them you can look at the titles and there's something wrong with this. Like you said earlier, a lot of them are obviously about promoting homosexuality or promoting the whole trans thing or promoting other themes that kids don't need to be taught in school for sure. And confronted her on that. As far as being able to address the board, the state has requirements on that, and they did pass something recently where you are allowed to present, have an opportunity to speak. But this school board, they put together I guess, guidelines, and originally they included guidelines in there that made references to, being charged under a riot act in Tennessee. And we feel like that was probably to intimidate anybody from wanting to speak up. But Tennessee did make a change to the law this year. You do have a right to address the board. They can institute, some sort of format in terms of, okay, we can't give everybody 20 minutes to speak. So there is a format. Don't necessarily go into that right now, but they don't get to approve whether or not you get to speak. They just get to determine how much time, especially if there's numerous people that want to speak on that topic.
Right. And my understanding of that particular district is that it's very well funded by the left. There's a lot of that influence there, and they just obviously are very, they are vicious people.
Yeah.
They don't care, and they also have like some kind of some kind of like sick pleasure of like watching parents stress or watching get or watching all this happen. Like who would want that?
I couldn't answer that one, but now,
So
like I say,
that's what we're dealing with, though. That's the kind of like mentality that I think that we need to understand that it's not, this is the kind of mentality we're dealing with. So therefore, when we come up with a strategy, and that cannot be something that's going to be what a normal person would do. A lot of times you think like something that's going to work, or something that seems makes sense, doesn't make sense because of the type of people we're dealing with, because of how they are vicious and how they are unhinged and how they don't care about what you want. They are hell-bent on having their perversions rule. So
right.
that's the kind of people you're dealing with, you know what I'm saying? So you can't look at them like they're normal.
Well, the left has definitely infiltrated education in Tennessee and everywhere else, to include our small rural counties. I'm not saying that everybody on the school board is a leftist, but
Right.
they
No,
defer to your directors of schools. They defer to other people like that. And a lot of times your directors of schools are, I know in our county, I'll tell you right now, in our county, in Stewart County, the director of schools, he's certainly more to the left than some of the people on the board, because I've had to deal with him before. Now, he's not the worst out there, but the whole education system seems to have, they definitely have a left bent. And then what you get a lot of times in Tennessee, and I'm sure other states as well, we only do what the state tells us we have to do. And of course, they always refer to their lawyers, and their lawyers will always tell them when something's brought up, well, you better go along with it. And the go along with always has to do with what the left is pushing. And they'll always say, go along with it or you'll get sued. Well, if that's your standard that you'll get sued, then you'll never stand up for anything. I know that there is one of the processes, and it's not the only one for fighting back, but going after surety bonds. Can you talk about that a little bit?
well, yeah, that could be a good strategy, and I know that that can be a way to, because it is something that can happen. They can lose their bonds for breaking their oath, and particularly in Houston County, I know that there was the superintendent not willing to share what books were there until this individual, went through the process and let them know that they were going to be, put on notice or whatever the case may be for this. And then they quickly sent him the books or the list of the books.
Right.
So yeah, there is, that is a valid strategy. It's not the only one, and I wouldn't just depend on that 100% as a way to solve the problem, but it definitely is, it's legitimate. It's a longer process, but it always is when we're fighting against things like this. So I really feel it's good. It's a very possibly good idea as a possible strategy in dealing with something is like um, the what's happening in that particular county and all the almost unbelievable, you know, uh, lies and breakage of their own laws that they're doing. So I think that might be a good strategy for that particular area, and I think you should pursue that.
Now, you've seen it used in other areas, and can you explain a little bit? So some people might not understand what a surety bond
Well,
is.
I can't explain it as well as I should. Maybe someone needs to hear, but I know that there were other in another area, actually in New York State, where they put an excellent presentation, and they went to the nth degree, and in that particular area, it for some reason the judge didn't accept it. So I mean, it was so perfect, but the judge didn't accept it, so it was basically thrown out, and they weren't successful. But I think that every area has maybe a slightly different process. I'm not sure what Tennessee is, but I know that happened in New York.
Right.
And then the county sheriff did not approve it. So I hope to be able to help them with that soon enough. But to go after that sheriff, because it was very clear that they had very, very, a huge amount of pornography and books and stuff in the school system there. And it was just unbelievable to see how a judge would not rule that as something that, and not, do that with their bond. I couldn't understand it. It's almost unbelievable. So I think that it depends on the scenario, the landscape of the situation, all the different pieces, because there's not a one size fits all for anything. Every situation, every town, every, district, whatever the case may be, has to be studied. You have to understand the landscape. You have to understand like what's going on and how things work in order to come up with a strategy. It's not just
Right.
try this. It takes a lot of studying your enemy, so to speak, to understand what's really going on and what would really cause it to be able to be, to flip.
Right.
Uh, you know,
You can't cut and
yeah.
paste from one state to the other because state laws are different and whatnot. And what the one you were talking about where the judge wouldn't allow it and the sheriff, I just want to clarify for the audience, that was in New York, not Houston County, Tennessee. Just keep that straight.
Yes.
What are
Yeah.
some of the other methods?
Well, on here, it's not really like talking like a strategies. You don't really do that on, but that's something we would do with individuals. We don't want to expose everything, but and just to tell you that in very simple terms, in order to fight back, like I said, that you need to be able to understand what is happening, who appoint in the library, for instance. Are the library directors appointed? Are they elected by the people? If they're appointed, who appointed them? Do the people, the city council, do they understand what's in the library? There's just so many factors, there's so many different things you have to take into account before you can just say this is going to work. But it all boils down to pressure, to relentless pressure on what is, on the people that are basically lying. And, they are lying and we have the truth. So giving, the pressure is the thing, and the people willing to push back and, do whatever it takes, be writing letters, a newspaper, showing up at meetings. I mean, there's just so many things. I can't just say it's one thing.
Right.
But if you, like some of the things I mentioned, or going to council meetings, petitions, I mean, there's just many, signs, protest, not necessarily protesting, but it depends. It really does depend. It depends on the particular situation and what's happening and who's in power and why they're in power and what's the problem and how did it get there and who put it there. You know what I'm saying? So it's there's just a variety of things you can do, but there's not just one that's going to work everywhere.
Right. Now,
It just
to clarify, is ALA, American Library Association, do they deal with just school libraries or school and public libraries? Do you know?
libraries, and also they're like, I've learned recently, they're in a lot of things. Yes, they are in public libraries, they're in universities, they are everywhere. They
Okay.
really are. I've noticed more and more. They're they're not just the public libraries and the schools, but they are. I forgot the acronym for it, but schools, and are affiliated with the ALA, and as well as the public libraries. Absolutely.
Now, I'm sure you guys have a list of books on your website. And we've mentioned, there's that in the libraries and the schools, you're seeing obscenity, pornography, they're promoting a homosexual lifestyle, they're promoting the whole trans ideology and all. But can you talk about, for somebody out there that's listening and maybe they're like, well, surely it can't be this graphic, can you give us some examples of some of the things, if you're comfortable talking about them, that you have seen in these schools? Or just a description of the books and maybe
Let
some
me give you.
specific titles, if you could.
Okay, well, there's this one book called "This Book Is Gay," I think it is, and they're at the schools and the libraries. They have, where you can virtually get a book out, where they have, you know what I mean, you can get it on your iPad, which a lot of kids do. And on that particular book, there's hyperlinks in there, and the kids can click on them. And what they do is they show kids how, where to go to have sex with, homosexual men and how to hook up. And this is in that book, where that's on the online version. Um, let's see another one. Like this show, like explicit stuff, like how very, I mean, I know it's kind of uncomfortable to say it's so disgusting. But things, sexual acts of between, young people that are inappropriate and same sex, or if you look, I mean, it's just like there's so many, or just like sex in general, or just like pervertedness and pictures about it, just pornography.
Pretty much, if you can imagine it, it's probably being pushed.
Yeah, I mean, yes, and genderqueer, that's one. Genderqueer. Look at that title. Uh, that where they show younger kids, you know, giving this other young boy a what they call a blowjob, okay? And for instance, and just normalizing it. See, the whole thing isn't about, it's not to be shocked, it's not the shock effect. Because it's normal, and it's to normalize it. And this is what kids should be doing. They should be sexualized at a young age, and they should not know if they're a boy or a girl, and they shouldn't tell their parents either.
Yeah, that's
Because,
their agenda. That's the left's agenda, and that's what they're
well,
pushing.
yeah, in a way, it's so much. It's like it's utterly sick, and it's something that we should not be tolerated. And a lot of people maybe do not know about it, and that's part of it, is letting people, making people aware. But also, yeah, when we do have activists, we do understand what's happening. And we do need people that are, courageous and really do want to stop this, and we can win it.
And you have to fight it to win it. You can't just wait for somebody else to do it.
That's very true.
Yeah. Well, and you know what's frustrating in Tennessee? I know on different topics they've passed different laws. I mean, we do have some good legislators in Tennessee. And I know, for instance, they passed a law a few years ago, and it was in regards to CRT, but I think it was called the Prohibited Principles legislation or something like that, because they didn't want to just say no CRT because they'll just rename it. So you had to identify the principles that were being taught. And so we had a law that makes it illegal to teach that in our schools. But there's two things. Number one, the enforcement mechanism really was not what it needed to be. And number two, on that and other issues, it seems that we've had teachers, we've had other people in the school system throughout the state basically say, oh, I'm not going to follow that. I'm still going to teach this stuff. And nothing happens to them. It's like they pass a law and it gets ignored. And that's really frustrating.
It's more or less, it is like a religion. It is a religion. They've turned it into that. And if you notice, like, Christianity is seen as something that's like, they're trying to turn it like it's something poisonous or something that, and it's becoming like, what did the FBI say recently? That, people that are support MAGA are, like a threat to the United States.
Yeah, yeah. Well, they were, I guess, spying on Catholic churches there for a while too. Probably still are. They're probably spying on all the churches, would be my guess when you're talking the FBI.
Right, but that's the point, that there's no end to it, and that, people need to understand that, and that you cannot be afraid and to let, like, evil rule, or to be let yourself be bullied is ridiculous. Like, how was this country even founded in the first place? Did people, like, were they afraid and just said, oh, I guess we'll just do what they say?
Yeah,
No, it's
yeah.
just it's the exact same thing now. It's exactly the same.
Well, it was worse. It's worse now than it was then. I mean, the things that our federal government pushes on us now, to include on our kids, I mean, even the British would have never have dreamed of pushing this kind of garbage on us. Matter of fact, they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it themselves. I mean, we have the government that our founders were afraid of having, and that's why they wrote in the protections. But guess what? The protections are not self-activating. That's why we have states. People need to remember that the states created federal government, not the other way around. We're not just subdivisions of the federal government, and that's why it's incumbent on our state to push back. Unfortunately, our states won't do that without people demanding it. And if we can't get them fired up about their kids and grandkids and push back on this in the schools, I don't really know what we can get them fired up about.
Well, we are the majority. And that's the thing, which is we are the majority, are the conservatives are, I believe, in all, in towns and cities and school districts, but because we're not like so-called in charge, they think they don't have a voice, but they do. And I believe that when parents, getting on board with us at Mass Resistance, to be able to start an army of parents in different areas with, being led in strategies, they can really be successful to turn this around.
Yeah.
And it's just a fact. Absolutely.
Well, one thing I've seen in Tennessee and I think it's part of the problem, and I'm sure it's a problem in other states too, have a lot of rural counties, will have a lot of small towns, everybody grew up together, everybody knows everybody. Odds are some of the people teaching your kids you went to school with. And maybe you go to church with them every Sunday or whatever. And as far as you know, so there's a lot of trust there. And unless somebody finds out about something and brings it up, and not just brings it up but stays on. I can give you a couple examples here in my county, Stewart County, which is also a small rural county. Some of the garbage that has gone on in our county over the years, we had 5 or 6 years ago, we had a kid at the high school who was wearing a dress, a boy wearing a dress and wanting to be treated like a girl. And so what did the administration do? Well, they catered to him. They wouldn't let him use the girls' bathroom, so they let him use the faculty's bathroom. And they did all of this. I mean, I didn't have any kids in school at the time, but I did go talk to the board. And the answer from the lawyer is, well, if we don't do it, then, we'll get sued. That's their fallback. Well, we'll get sued. But it never seems to apply to a conservative issue. It's always catering to the left, and we have to cater to the left or we'll get sued.
Right. And then we have to stop. We have to say no. And like, for instance, if that, we go after that principal, whoever was saying that, like the people go after him and say, this is ridiculous. Like if a child who, is confused like that doesn't need, needs to be helped.
Institutionalized.
Or just needs help. Like who knows why maybe, parents can be abusive and confuse a child. If a child, there's a lot of really sick people that have, do that on purpose. Like they have some kind of ideas in their mind, so they push it on their children and confuse their child to convince them they're not who they are. Like who does that?
We've got some sick ones out there. But
That's what I mean.
I do think that's a problem in the rural district. There's a lot of trust, and there shouldn't be, because these are your kids. Guess what? All those teachers, especially the younger ones, and I'm not saying there's not any good ones. I'm not saying that all of them do this, but they all went to some left-wing college. I mean, UT is radical left. Most all your schools in Tennessee, like every other state, are radical left. So what do you think they learned? What do you think they believe? So you may have grown up with them in church. You may see them every Sunday, but don't assume that they still believe the way you believe. And don't assume they won't push that stuff on your kids.
Right. And so therefore, if you think about it, if all these people who are trusting, if they just need to know the truth, I suppose, number one, and then to just like, because it is the truth, and they need to know what's happening, and just not, trusting it is great, but sometimes you have to just see things for what they are and see the truth, so you can make things, so things can improve, because living a lie is not going to help anybody.
No.
And so,
are there some other organizations that, left-wing organizations, that parents and teachers that care need to be leery of, need to be watching out for?
I don't know. Like in schools, a lot of times they have like the GSA club, and I don't know if they do it. Maybe I'm not sure about that district. Gay Straight Alliance, GLSEN, like it's like an American Education Organization. They call End Discrimination, and they push the left, the LGBTQ agenda. That's something is seen as, like I said, like a religion, like something that needs to be honored. They can't be discriminated against. They have to have equal rights. They have to do all this, So if your child wants to, think he's a cat, and then you have to let him do that, because he has a right, a human right, and it's all gotten way out of hand.
Yeah, I've heard about that at the schools too, as well. Even in our county, I've heard about it. I don't have, I haven't seen it firsthand, but it wouldn't shock me.
Right. So, yeah, there are some kind of groups, and if you can check a school's website and you can see kind of where they're at with some things. Sometimes they hide it better than others, but um, you know, that there's a lot of different kind of groups and clubs that they have. And we need to start our own club. We can have a truth club in all the schools where the kids can tell the truth. And nobody has the right to tell them they can't say the truth.
I like that,
And
Truth Club.
yeah, and that's what I was wanting, and I do want to see across all the United States is that kids, because a lot of kids they don't buy this junk. They know it's garbage. The majority of them, and they need to not be afraid. They need to be able to start their own club and say no, like you are born either a male or a female, and that's who you are. Okay, and nobody is born gay. Okay, and that you know what I mean,
Right.
and you know what I mean? Lies and we're taught that we speak the truth, and then we can encourage each other and let that get out, let that that people catch wind of that in the school and let that grow. And I'm telling you, the young kids, they're not that this is garbage. Like they're just being brainwashed, but there's a lot of kids that are there who really understand, and we need their voice. We need the young people too to be able to take charge and speak up. And there are a lot that do, but I feel that with something like Truth Club across the United States and all the different public schools with the kids, you know, enough is enough.
Yeah.
And I believe that it's time for something like that to start.
I like that idea, a Truth Club.
Me
And
too.
the thing is, too, with education, I mean, it's important that you get a good education, but obviously they're working more on indoctrination and have been for a while. That's one of those things that, I mean, they keep producing little Marxists and little weirdos. That's what they're producing. And
Yes, who
it's
yes.
ongoing, and that's one of the things we've got to stop. I mean, to me, the schools that's a huge issue. And if we don't fix it, we don't survive long term as a country, which I think that's probably debatable anyway. I mean, at this point, I believe divine intervention and state intervention are the only thing that can possibly save us. And once again, when it comes to the state intervention, we can't just, we have to force our state legislature to fix these things. And that means part of that is, okay, yeah, we hear what the federal government says, but when the federal government says something that's obviously unconstitutional, it's obviously immoral and wrong, like the garbage that they push through the Department of Education, we have to say no. The first easy thing to do is to say, you know what, we're not taking any more federal dollars. We're not going to be bribed with our own money anymore.
Yeah, states being separate. I know that's a very sound way to go. And then, if you have the person ahead of the state, the governor or whatever, would need to be also thinking clearly and understand, that sexual perversion and pornography is not for kids ever.
Right, right.
And there's no book banning either. The book banning that's another bunch of junk. I mean, none of those books are banned. You could buy them, and no one's trying to ban books. You can go to Amazon to get that anytime. We just don't want them paid for and by our tax dollars in a public library or a public school. They don't belong there.
Right, right. Well, if you gave that kid some of those things to a kid elsewhere, that would, I'm sure they could charge you with obscenity violations.
Exactly. So it's the pressure, it's the continuance, it's um, you know, and please, anyone can hear, but it's to come and check and join mass resistance. We need people. To help people to strategize, to move forward, and fight this stuff and win. Because we win, and that's what we fight the left and we win because we have the truth, and what we have, you know, they don't, and they're lying to us, and that we can, we can turn it around. We can turn it around.
Well, hopefully more people get involved in the fight. Anything else you want to say before we sign off from the audience?
Um, no, I just reiterate, I guess, that this is a war that we're in. This is not a disagreement. It's a war, and the left doesn't have a conscience about like right or wrong.
Right.
And yeah, and it's about they want power and control, but I think that this is something that we can continue to work at and do great at, and I look forward to more momentum happening.
Well, look forward to working with you. I thank you for being our guest tonight. If you'll just stay with us. Thank everybody for watching us tonight. We really appreciate your time and support for the show. If you've been enjoying our program and the content we bring your way, be sure to click the like button to let us know. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button to stay tuned for more Tennessee Informer. We look forward to having you with us in the future. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Please spread the word. There will be no guest speaker next week, but I'll do a special show focused on the 10th Amendment. We will have a special guest and bonus show on Friday, November 3rd, featuring Dr. Bill Warner of CSPII. I have titled the show, Doctrine of Evil, What You Need to Know About Political Islam. Thanks for watching, and hope you join us again next week.